Hello YouTube, been a while since I made a comic haul video, so I'm happy to be back with quite a few books, many months worth of books here. So what's on the menu? To start off, I've got about 6 magazines, 2 of them from Comic Link, CGC. I've got one book that I found in my PC, which is really noteworthy. I've got some books from a small con in Houston called the Pop Culture Power Con, some LCS books at really good deals, lots of eBay buys, and something kind of interesting that relates to a collection that I was given called the Chaotic Comics Collection, is a stack of books that I found in this collection as I cleaned up and processed the collection, and quite a few smaller keys and just interesting books by some of my favorite artists or some favorite characters that I pulled out of that collection. And when I show that stack, I'll throw up some pics of the collection itself. But that collection was amassed by me and 3 friends in high school and used as inventory for a comic shop that we ran in the back of a print shop in Southeast Texas many years ago in the early 90s. And then lastly, I have some CGC books and some keys. First off, we've got the Rampaging Hulk #1 from 1977. Savage Sword of Conan 143 from 1987. I had a copy of this from when I was a kid. I always really loved this Joe Jusko cover. Probably my favorite piece by Joe Jusko and definitely my favorite Savage Sword of Conan cover. Conan Saga #7. These reprinted a bunch of the early Barry Windsor-Smith Conan books, and I just really love this Conan image on the front, this Barry Windsor-Smith piece. Here's Comic Scene #1 from 1982. Okay, the 2 CGC magazines from Comic Link. Savage Tales #5 from 1974 with this badass Neil Adams cover with Conan and Kazar. And definitely the standout for this stack, Savage Sword of Conan #1 from 1974 in a 9.6 with a killer Boris Vallejo cover. Here's the one PC book I wanted to share. I bought this probably 4 or 5 years ago. This is from 1990, Excalibur #27. And this was sitting in my PC I had bought from my comic shop 4 or 5 years ago, and I had not written down why. And so looking through it, I realized that this book has Barry Windsor-Smith pencils and Bill Sienkiewicz inks, which is a pretty legendary pair if you ask me. This is a Wozniak cover, I think. But yeah, so if you're a Sienkiewicz fan or a Barry Windsor-Smith fan, this is one to maybe put on your want list. Got this stack of books from the Pop Culture Power Con in Houston, Texas. That was a show put on by Edwin, Strictly Comics. He goes under Strictly Comics on YouTube and Instagram. Great guy. Really cool show. I didn't buy anything big or substantial or spend a ton of money. These were just the few dollar books that I found. So here's Alpha Flight 106. That's the coming out issue of North Star. Alpha Flight Annual 1. I'm just an Alpha Flight collector, no key significance there. This is Batman the Detective 1 of 6. And this is a first appearance of a person called Squire or Amina. I don't know anything about it. Ambush Bug #1. Power Pack #1. Had multiple copies of these that I sold off, so happy to have another high grade. Classic X-Men 15. This is a run I'm putting together sort of just on the side, not aggressively. If I see them in high grade, I'll grab them, especially if I don't have them yet. But I would like to have maybe the first 30 issues of this as a run, mainly because of all the killer covers and the new material. Just really love this run. X-Man 15, this is the first appearance of Onslaught. Here are some books I found at 2 LCSs, Bookstand and All-Star Comics. All really high grade. Was able to get these between $1 and $4 each, mostly $1 and $2. Here's X-Men 542. This is where Colossus becomes Juggernaut. X-Men Legacy 214. I think this is a continuation of the Volume 2 run with the Jim Lee art. This is the first appearance of Miss Sinister, a clone of Mr. Sinister that he cloned for some reason, and I really like the Mr. Sinister character. So that's a bit of a speculation, but to pick them up for a cover price, I got 3 of them, is not bad. Definitely speculated on that character, but I'm kind of an X-Men completist. X-Men Volume 2, #36. This is the first appearance of a character called Sync. Free Comic Book Day Divergence #1. This is the first appearance of Darkseid's daughter, Grail. Last one in the stack is Iraq #1, which is the first appearance of Angelica. Don't think it has any significance, but it was a high-grade newsstand from the 80s. Okay, this stack was all from eBay. Starting off with Classic X-Men #5, high-grade newsstand, Art Adams cover. Classic X-Men 24, high-grade newsstand also. The reason I bought this one in particular was this is one of those covers from my childhood that just got burned into my consciousness. For whatever reason, when I look at this cover, it just really brings me back to when I was 10, 11 years old in the late 80s. And that Wolverine pose and the Sentinel there, whatever that robot character is in yellow, I just remember that so vividly. And there are about 4 or 5 books and covers that sort of fit that criteria for me, and this was one of them, so saw an opportunity to grab it in high grade. Couple interesting books here. X-Men Universe 1 and 2 from 1999. These previewed various X-Men titles coming out at the time. This stack is all first appearances, bought new off the rack this year, going back probably a few months, so you should be able to get most of these still even now at cover price. So first one, World's Finest 15, is Ultra Morpho Cameo. X-23 Deadly Genesis number 1 is the first Haymaker cameo. X-23 Deadly Genesis 2 is the first full Haymaker and first cover appearance. Extreme Venomverse 1 is the first Eddie Brock Spider-Man and the first Samurai Venom. Miles Morales Spider-Man number 1 is the first Raneem/Rabble. I think that's the same person, and this might be considered a cameo. Miles Morales Spider-Man 2 is the first full appearance of Rabble. Spawn 339 is the first cameo appearance of Cataclysm. I'm not sure about 340, but I looked through these and I believe that character shows up here, so I sort of bought this as the first full appearance of Cataclysm. Here's a very large group of books that I pulled out of the Chaotic Comics collection. They all have some sort of significance, but I'm saving the ones that have any monetary value as key issues or whatever for the last bit, and I'll signal when that part of this stack starts. Before I get into this stack, I want to show you guys a picture of the collection. Here is the collection when I received it on the day of from my good friend Billy Stanley, who's on YouTube as Billy Bob and Company, who was also one of the partners in this comic shop from back in the 90s. And here is a picture of the organized, alphabetized, cleaned up, boxed up collection, which I just finished yesterday. So that'll give you a little insight into where these books came from. Starting off here, Moon Knight 35, 2 copies, and this is the first appearance of Randall Spector, who is Moon Knight's brother and becomes a character called Shadow Knight, sort of a dark version of Moon Knight. And all of these are from 1992. Number 36 is the first full appearance of Shadow Knight, and 37 is Shadow Knight Origin. Fantastic Four 377 in a newsstand. This is the first appearance of Huntara. Topps Comics. Jack Kirby did a bunch of books for Topps Comics. Kind of a weird little footnote in comics history. This one, Captain Glory, a one of one. Okay, so it's not a miniseries, it's just a one-shot. The reason I kept this one was because of the Ditko art on the inside. I think he does the full book, which is cool to see Jack Kirby and Steve Ditko, the OGs, pair up. Spider-Man 2099, number 1. This is probably the worst grade of all these books. It has a pretty noticeable tick right there. Superboy number 1 from 1994. This is the first appearance of Knockout. Really like this one. I think this was the first book I pulled out of this collection. I used to own a copy of FF48 in about a CGC 6.0 and sold it in 2018, and now it's worth 4 or 5 times what I sold it for, I'm sure, or more. So I've got a little bit of a seller's regret for that, and I just really love this cover. Here's a Paul Ryan homage to FF48 on FF390 in a newsstand. Spider-Man 47 is the first appearance of Vladimir Kravenov, or the Grim Hunter character who is the son of Kraven. Spider-Man 49 is the first appearance of Coldheart. Comics Greatest World Week 1 X. This is a Frank Miller cover back when Frank Miller was making really, really good art. Isn't that a beautiful image? It's much better than the Wolverine drawing that we've all seen on social media that really looks like crap. If you want to weigh in on the comments about how much you like that Wolverine image, I'm happy to enter into a debate on that. But yeah, Frank Miller, what an artist back in the day for sure, 80s and 90s. Excalibur 42, another favorite artist, master artist, Alan Davis. This is the first Kylan as an adult. Excalibur 44 in newsstand is the first appearance of Micro Max. X Factor 96 is the first appearance of Haven in a cameo. Moving on with more books from the Chaotic Comic Collection, here is Green Lantern 50 from 1994. This is a DC Universe variant, which is pretty cool. I don't have any of those. It's the first Kyle Rayner as Green Lantern and the first appearance of Parallax. Fantastic Four 358 from 91 is the first Pybok the Power Scroll. Doom 2099 number 1, found 2 copies of this, and the second copy is especially interesting because of the way the book was cut. You'll notice on the top edge of the cover and the bottom edge of the cover for the second copy, after I've removed this first one, that it's cut at a diagonal angle. Really strange, and I always love those manufacturing errors. Continuing with the 2099 books, here's Punisher 2099 number 1, and the cream of the crop, I think we all agree, Ravage 2099 number 1. Not really sure why I kept that one. Thor 330 from 1983 is the first appearance of the Crusader. X-Men 20 is just a run filler for me. X-Men 312 is the first appearance of Phalanx, first full appearance of Phalanx. X-Men 317 is the first appearance of Blink. Solution number 5 from Ultraverse has a Stranger's Origin story by Adam Hughes. So some really cool Adam Hughes art in a short story inside. Youngblood number 2 is the first appearance of Prophet, and Youngblood number 3 is the first appearance of Supreme. Here's an interesting group of books from the Chaotic Comics collection, all Barry Windsor-Smith rune stories that appear in the back of Ultraverse titles, various Ultraverse titles. And they're short, maybe 4 to 5 pages. I'm not sure if they're excerpts or original stories, but the cover on the back cover of each of these makes up a larger image, and you see the silhouette of that image here. So if you collect all, say, 15 books or so, you can complete this image with all the back covers of these books. So I'm sort of collecting these now because I found about 7 or 8 of them in the Chaotic Comics collection. So I'll show those now, along with some other Barry Windsor-Smith books from that collection. And here they are. And here are the rest of the Barry Windsor-Smith books. There's New Mutants 46 newsstand with a really cool X-Men cover by him. Marvel Fanfare 15, he did a really interesting original, wrote and drew an original FF story in this book. Some Image stuff with Wildcats number 20. And here is Predator versus Magnus Robot Fighter number 2. And lastly, Rune number 6. What an awesome image on that cover. And here's the last stack from the Chaotic Comics collection. These have a bit more key significance. Not all have much higher monetary value, but some do. Starting off, Avengers West Coast 94 from 1993. This is the first appearance of Rhodey as War Machine. Then there's War Machine number 1, which is sort of a key. Batman 406 from 1987 is Year 1 Part 3 with a Frank Miller story and Mazzucchelli art. I'd never read this series or looked at much of Mazzucchelli's art, but I really fell in love with it after looking through this book. Batman 436 from 1989 is the first appearance of Tim Drake and Year 3 Part 1. Newsstand and direct for this book. Alpha Flight 53 from 1987 is the first Jim Lee cover art at Marvel, and also I believe it's the first time he drew Wolverine. His first work at Marvel was Alpha Flight 51, in which he did the interior art, not the cover, and I don't believe he drew Wolverine. Then he was out on issue 52. So this is a bit of a key for me, at least. Savage Dragon number 4 has this Adam Hughes story on the back part. Rapture and Ricochet, really nice Adam Hughes art on this. Shadow Cabinet number 1 from DC Milestone has a John Byrne cover. Finding a couple of these books in this collection turned me on to the fact that John Byrne did a lot of covers for DC Milestone. And there's another one, Cobalt number 1. A couple of Tales of the Teen Titans first appearances right around the time when Nightwing appeared on this George Perez run. Here's number 42 from 84. First Jericho and Adeline Wilson cameo. Another newsstand, number 43, which is their first, same character's first full appearance. Superboy Zero from 1994 is the first King Shark cameo. It just shows his hands, I believe, or it might be his mouth, but just one image at the end of the book. Newsstand and direct. Lady Death and the Women of Chaos Gallery #1. Not in the best grade and not worth a lot of money. I just really love Stephen Hugh's art. I like the character, so I hung on to this. Lady Death Crucible 4 #1, I believe, with that very 90s embossed silver cover. And last book from the Chaotic Comics collection is Savage Dragon #3 in a newsstand. Here are some raw keys that I've been buying, mostly on eBay. These are books that have been on my want lists, so I've sort of been actively hunting these. I have a couple of copies of Hulk 197, and this is an epic Bernie Wrightson cover pitting the Hulk against the Man-Thing. And for me, it's really cool to see Bernie Wrightson draw the Man-Thing. As the creator of Swamp Thing, as the iconic artist behind Swamp Thing, Man-Thing and Swamp Thing are sort of two sides of the same coin. Love this book. Happy to have 3 copies of that. Moon Knight #1 from 1980. This is of course the first solo series, so it's a key for that reason, but it's also the first appearance of the Bushman. Swamp Thing #2 from 1972, first Anton Arcane and first Patchwork Man cameo. House of Secrets 135 from 1975, Bernie Wrightson cover. Avengers 69 from 1969, first appearance of Squadron Sinister in cameo, the first Hyperion cameo, and the first Grand Master, which is Jeff Goldblum's character from Thor Ragnarok. X-Men Adventures #1 from 1992, it's a newsstand copy and the first appearance of Morph. Thor #440, that is from 1991, and this is the first appearance of the Thor Corps. Thor 459 is from 1993, this is the first appearance of Thunderstrike. This is when Eric Masterson becomes Thunderstrike, I believe. Alien Worlds #1, this is from 1982, and a beautiful Chiodo cover. New Teen Titans #21 is the first appearance of Brother Blood. Okay, feel free to poke fun at this book in the comments if you like. This is Spider-Man #7 from 2023, that particular variant. I forget who did the art. And then the cover A of the same book. First appearance of Spider-Boy. Alright, the last batch of books here is going to be all CGC that I've bought over the last few months. But we're going to do this in 2 parts. The first part are CGC books that I'll be selling on my eBay page. I think I only have 1 X-Men listed right now. I'll be listing the rest of these in the next few days, and I will include a link to my eBay page for anyone who's interested in purchasing any of these. Okay, to start out, Amazing Spider-Man 172. This is the first appearance of Rocket Racer in a 9.6. Amazon #1, that's from Amalgam. I had a raw copy of this earlier in the video by John Byrne in a 9.8. Avengers 28, first appearance of the Collector in a 5.5. Avengers #43, first appearance of the Red Guardian in a 6.5. Omega Man #3, first Lobo in a 9.6. This was one I was heavily considering keeping, but I think I'm going to sell. Thor 134, first High Evolutionary in a 6.0. X-Men #56 in an 8.5. This is an interesting book. It's the first appearance of the Living Goliath, which is not a major character or anything, but this is the first book in the Neil Adams art run. And last book that you'll be able to find on my eBay page is Uncanny X-Men 282 newsstand in a 9.0, white pages. That's the first appearance of Bishop by the great Whilce Portacio. And the last part here is all CGC books that are keepers. I'll be keeping these all in the PC. Most of these came from Comic Link. A few, 2 or 3 at most, may have come from eBay. And we're going to go through these from least expensive to most expensive. So the last 4 or 5 are the real biggies. Starting off here with Thor 391. This is a Mark Jewelers variant, or Mark Jewelers insert variant. And it's also the first appearance of Eric Masterson, who later becomes Thor and shares the consciousness with Donald Blake in Thor's body, and then after that becomes the character Thunderstrike. Here's Spectacular Spider-Man 24, first appearance of the Hypno Hustler. As a huge Man-Thing fan, this is a big key, although it's not as big in most people's consciousness as Fear #10, which is the first solo Man-Thing. But this is a Neil Adams cover, which is great and awesome. Love it. But also, this is the first appearance of Jennifer Kale, and it's the first mention of the Nexus of Reality, and Man-Thing acts as sort of a steward or warden of the Nexus of Reality. Here is the first Hellboy. This is John Byrne's X-Men 21. Had that one on my radar for quite a while. Happy to have it. Nice companion for Fantastic Four 45, which is the first appearance of the Inhumans. I was able to get that in a 7.0, which was featured in my last video. Here is FF 46, the first full appearance and cover appearance of Black Bolt. Nova number 1 is the first appearance of Nova. Astonishing Tales 25 and a 9.0, first appearance of Deathlock. Had this one on the want list for years, so really happy to check that one off. Solson Christmas Special number 1 in a 9.6. This is the first ever professional published work by Jim Lee. X-Men number 28, 7.5. This is the first appearance of Banshee. These next 3 books have to do with Squadron Sinister, which becomes Squadron Supreme later, and the character Hyperion. So Avengers 69 and 8.5. This is the first Grandmaster, the first appearance of Squadron Sinister in Cameo. Here is Avengers number 70 in an 8.5. It's not labeled on the CGC label, but this would be considered the first full appearance of the Squadron Sinister. And then here is Avengers number 85. This is the first appearance of the Squadron Supreme. And last but surely not least are these 4 books, starting with Special Marvel Edition 15 in an 8.5. That's the first appearance of Shang-Chi. Avengers number 9, 6.0, first appearance of Wonder Man. This is a pretty treasured book in my collection now. I had a 9.6 back in 2018 that I sold, regretted it pretty heavily. Bought an 8.0 about a year ago and upgraded to this 9.2 recently. One of my favorite Bernie Wrightson covers. And there's the book to end this video. I really love this. This is easily the biggest book I own at this point. House of Secrets 92 and an 8.0, first appearance of Swamp Thing. Swamp Thing 1 is the first appearance of the Alec Holland version of Swamp Thing, which is the one that goes on to appear in every other book that had Swamp Thing in the DC universe. I'm not much of a DC collector, I'm more of a Marvel guy, but Swamp Thing is definitely my favorite DC character, so this is not just a Grail, but a personal Grail for me. Hey, thank you guys for watching. I hope that video wasn't too long for you. Check out my eBay page if you're interested in any of those CGC books for sale. See you next time.